Coming up on Network Africa. Soldiers injured as huge blast rocks Somali capital, Mogadishu. German government extends Mali mandate, increases personnel in the country. Plus, Ghana and Togo start rebuilding border markers. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin in Somalia, where a huge explosion was reported in the capital Mogadishu earlier today. A suicide bomber is reported to have targeted vehicles at a checkpoint along the highway to the Aden Hade International Airport. According to local sources, the attack in an area called the Kilometer 4 Junction is said to have left several injured, including soldiers and civilians. The area is less than 5 kilometers from the airport, which is the venue for Sunday's presidential election. That's where candidates vying for the presidency are meant to be delivering their campaign speeches to Parliament. The African Union mission in the country had earlier imposed a curfew at the Air Force hangar and its surroundings. The president is expected to be chosen by MPs from 39 candidates who have put themselves forward. The complicated voting process involving the election of members for 2 houses of parliament by an indirect system has already been delayed for more than a year, partly because of insecurity in the country. Last month, a mortar attack interrupted a parliamentary session where newly sworn-in MPs were sitting. Several people were injured. At least 5 Egyptian military personnel have been killed in a militant attack on Wednesday in northern Sinai. This is the second deadly strike against security forces on the peninsula in less than a week. According to security officials, 4 others were injured when armed men opened fire at a security post in the coastal area of northeastern Sinai, which borders the Gaza Strip. The deaths follow a May 7 ambush at a checkpoint that killed 11 Egyptian soldiers and was claimed by the Islamic State, one of the deadliest attacks in recent years. Egypt expanded security control over the populated coastal areas of northern Sinai since a major counterinsurgency operation was launched in 2018, but sporadic attacks by militants linked to Islamic State have continued. And Germany says it has agreed to raise its contingent in the UN's MINUSMA peacekeeping mission in Mali to a maximum of 1,400 troops from 1,100. And according to the government, this is to help plug gaps left by a French pullout. The government also adds that the Mali mandate has been extended to May the 31st, 2023. The announcement comes as France is pulling its forces out of Mali, which are separate from MINUSMA, after relations with the country's ruling military leaders broke down. These forces, which are part of France's Barkhane anti-jihadist mission in the Sahel, have also played an important part supporting UN troops in the country, especially with air power. As a result of the French decision, Germany has been mulling its deployment in Mali. Alongside its extension of its MINUSMA participation, it would also be shrinking its training mission as part of the EU's deployment to minimal presence as the bloc put the mission on ice. Back here in Nigeria, as part of efforts to building the educational future of Nigerian students, the United States diplomatic mission in Nigeria has brought together senior leaders from the National Universities Commission, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities, for a 2-day summit aimed at promoting tertiary learning. At its inaugural Nigerian Higher Education Conference with the theme opening new frontiers, mobilizing stakeholders to build long-term partnership between US and Nigerian institutions of higher education. The US affirms its commitment to supporting educational institutions and strengthening Nigeria's educational system. Our correspondent, Layo Olanride, was at the event and now brings us more details.
The U.S. consulate in Nigeria is trying to explore opportunities in the higher educational space of the country to forge institutional partnerships between U.S. and Nigerian universities on international joint and dual degrees. The conference, according to the U.S. consulate officer Stephen Ibeli, is also to promote virtual and in-person faculty and students at the universities, the National University.
We do apologize for the poor audio. We will try and bring you back that report. Meanwhile, internally displaced persons in Borno State, Nigeria, are learning how to identify and avoid explosive devices. Using images and simulations, Nigerians displaced by a deadly Islamist insurgency are receiving life-saving lessons about how to identify and avoid explosive devices as they begin returning to the villages they fled. The training is organized by global humanitarian and advocacy organization, Minds Advisory Group.
Global Humanitarian and Advocacy Organization, Minds Advisory Group, MAG, is coordinating the teachings around the northeast of Nigeria, helping people from war-ravaged communities live, play and work as safely as possible. Back in 2014, when Jadayi Gentiku was still a student at the University of Maiduguri, he unknowingly picked up a bomb after soldiers repelled a Boko Haram attack with plans to show it to the security, but an older man asked him to drop it gently and instead go and call the security to manage the situation. That near-death experience inspired him to join MAG to teach others. Jantiku is now a community liaison officer with MAG.
Most of the beneficiaries in the camps in Borno, or all displaced people in Borno entirely, they are farmers. Some are firewood vendors, some are hunters. And all these people used to go to the bush and get their livelihood activities. And these bushes are placed at the battlefield during this insurgency for the past 8 years. So they used to get in contact with this ARW in the community.
At this camp in Borno, northeast Nigeria, workers are teaching the people how to identify and avoid coming in contact with explosive devices. Using pictures, banners and other objects for simulation, they are taught to identify landmines, bombs and several other types of explosives and reach out to authorities for safe removal. For Umar Sani, Gubio camp has been his home for 8 years since he fled his village during a Boko Haram raid. He's been living here with his 2 wives and 17 children. He says though it is not safe for him to go back to the village, learning how to live a risk-free life will be a plus if they are finally evacuated.
If we're to go back to our villages now, then I sincerely see it as a forced eviction. The reason is that we left our villages because of conflict and the problems are still there. MAG's contribution in this camp is that they gather us district by district and enlighten us on what to do or avoid when we eventually go back to our villages.
The displaced persons in these communities, who are predominantly farmers and firewood sellers who wade through forests and bush paths, are taught not to touch these explosives when they sight them, but to reach out to authorities for action.
Some of them don't used to know what these items are. They used to pick them as scrap metal, or they used to pick them so that they can use it in doing pot or other activities. So before they know, it will end up taking their life. But with our activity commencing in Borno, some of them get to know that some of the items are dangerous items, and they are appreciating our activity for saving their lives.
Borno, which shares a border with Niger, Cameroon and Chad, has for more than a decade been the foremost outpost of insurgency.
And back to the report on the U.S. Higher Education Conference now here in Nigeria, where the U.S. affirmed its commitment to supporting educational institutions and strengthening Nigeria's educational system. Take a look.
The U.S. consulate in Nigeria is trying to explore opportunities in the higher educational space of the country to forge institutional partnerships between U.S. and Nigerian universities on international joint and dual degrees. The conference, according to the U.S. Consulate's Public Affairs Officer, Stephen Ibeli, is also to promote virtual and in-person faculty and student exchanges. Participants at the two-day meeting starting today include vice-chancellors of federal, state and private universities in Nigeria, representatives from U.S. universities, the National Universities Commission, NUC, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET Fund, and Committee of Vice-Chancellors of Nigerian Universities.
We align ourselves with this inaugural higher education conference because we'll be able to harvest and glean some of the best practices that make, some of those academic traditions thick. What are the things that we need to do differently? And this is why we're here. We hope that by partnering with the U.S. and other development partners, we will give our universities the much needed visibility.
Mr. Stephen Ibeli highlights that the plan to strengthen the educational system will also enable students to access quality education throughout Nigeria.
The reason why we're doing this is because we really want to explore the opportunities that we have for hybrid education, online education. And we have also contributed experts from the American side. Not everyone can go to the United States or other countries, but maybe we can bring the education to them. Maybe we can exploit these online resources, these partnerships for all of Nigerians.
Education remains the bedrock of any nation, and stakeholders believe this partnership will foster its growth in Nigeria despite the numerous challenges facing the sector. Layo Olarinde, Channels Television News.
And elsewhere in West Africa, Ghana and Togo have started an historic initiative to replace fast disappearing border markers in the face of rising insecurity and cross-border crimes in West Africa. Experts from the two countries are expected to construct 50 new international boundary pillars along a 40-kilometer stretch. Officials in Ghana say the old ones have either eroded or have been removed by vandals. The century-old markers were last repaired in the 1970s. Authorities say the latest move is to stop border encroachment and could also help address Ghana's long-standing maritime dispute with Togo in the Gulf of Guinea. However, some locals fear the exercise could put them on the wrong side of the border. In some parts, communities from both countries mix together for social and economic activities, but there have been communal tensions too in some areas. And still to come on the program. Russian Foreign Minister visits Algeria, praises country for stance taken on Ukraine crisis. More in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Some updates from the COVID-19 pandemic now. The World Health Organization's Director General, Tedros Ghebreyesus, says the pandemic is not over and all leaders need to step up to boost population immunity.
This pandemic is not over, and we need all leaders to step up to boost population immunity and work collectively to get tests, treatments, and vaccines to last-mile populations. Vaccination is the best way to save lives, protect communities and health systems, and minimize cases of post-COVID-19 condition or long COVID. Long COVID is devastating and debilitating for individuals, both young and old communities and economies. Governments need to take it seriously and provide integrated care, psychosocial support, and sick leave for those patients that are suffering from long COVID.
One of our problems, if we go back to the beginning of this pandemic, was a lack of agility in many places. It resulted in a lot of harm. It is important to reflect on the fact that China's only had just over 15,000 deaths during the whole pandemic. So in that sense, China had something to protect. And certainly over the last, since February, March, there was a rapid rise in deaths. So therefore, any government in that situation will take action to try and combat that. But all of those actions, as we've said since the beginning, should show due respect to individual and human rights. And we always have said as WHO that we need to balance the control measures against the impact they have on society, the impact they have on the economy. And that's not always an easy calibration to make. So as Dr. Tedros said, having that ability to adjust according to the circumstances, according to what you see in the data, and according to the best benefit for your population, to find an exit strategy that works for each and every country. And Dr. Tedros has been discussing that in depth and in detail with Chinese colleagues.
Next question.
To other stories now, Libya's eastern-based parliament wants the government it appointed under Fathi Bashagha to be based for now in the coastal city of Sirte. The announcement is the clearest acknowledgement yet that Mr. Bashagha cannot yet take over in the capital, Tripoli. Libya has been split between two opposing cabinets after Parliament in the East elected Mr. Bashagha as the new Prime Minister in February. The country's incumbent Prime Minister, Abdulhamid Dbeibah, who is based in the capital, has refused to hand over power without an election. Both men are supported by armed factions, and it's feared hostilities between the two could ignite a new round of conflict. Libya has experienced repeated violence ever since longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi was removed from power in 2011. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was in Algeria on Tuesday as the two countries marked the 60th anniversary of the bilateral diplomatic ties. During his visit, Mr. Lavrov met with President Abdulmajid Tebboune also one-on-one with his Algerian counterpart. Mr. Lavrov says Russia appreciates what he terms as balanced, objective stance taken by Algeria on the Ukraine crisis. The bilateral relations and the Ukraine issue were on the agenda of the meeting between the Algerian president and Lavrov, who arrived late on Monday. The former Secretary General of South Africa's Economic Freedom Fighters Party, Godrich Guardi, is appealing to citizens to help him with any information that might lead to clues about the events leading up to his daughter's killing. The body of Hilary Guardi, a 28-year-old lady, was found last Tuesday outside the city of Mbombela. According to reports, she disappeared on the 29th of April while going shopping. Writing on social media, her father is asking the public to help bring closure to him and his family with details, also ensuring the confidentiality of those who want to inform. 3 men have since been arrested in connection with the crime. Kidnapping is a widespread problem in South Africa, with one of the highest rates in the world. Mozambique's tax authority has seized about 20,000 mobile phones that were being smuggled into the country. A senior official at Jimo Jonas said they were contained in 250 boxes intercepted last week as they left a warehouse. Inspectors found they had no import documents and there were other invoicing problems. Jonah added that in the first 3 months of this year, tax officials had caught smugglers attempting to defraud the state of $47,000. Other seizures include luxury vehicles and alcohol. Meanwhile, the World Bank says it intends to resume direct budget support to Mozambique 6 years after it was suspended when more than $2.7 billion of undisclosed state debts were discovered. It became known as the tuna bond scandal, as much of the money the government secretly borrowed was to set up a fishing industry, but the money was allegedly diverted to corrupt officials. The announcement comes a day after the International Monetary Fund made a similar pledge. During a briefing in Washington, D.C., World Bank officials said the first tranche of $300 million would be up for approval by the end of June. The approval of the IMF program and the World Bank's budget support activities is also set to give a very strong signal to the market and also to all partners of Mozambique in terms of financing. This is expected to allow the government to create more resources for development that would also help deflect the economic impact of the Ukraine crisis and the coronavirus pandemic. Zimbabwean farmers looking to cash in on a global boom in medical marijuana face a litany of costs and regulatory barriers. However, growers like Munyadzi are betting it will boost their fortunes after decades of economic decline.
In Zimbabwe, tobacco is known as green gold, but farmers like Munyaradzi in Nyanungo are hoping it's cannabis that will be the cash crop that sparks a brighter future. Analysts say the global cannabis industry could be worth $272 billion by 2028, and across economically struggling Zimbabwe, there are hopes of cashing in on a boom in medical marijuana. But there are costs and regulatory barriers to getting set up, such as the requirement to use a greenhouse.
Greenhouse is a very costly setup. Take, for instance, this entire greenhouse, you need something around $500,000 just to set up the structure, and the plastics, then the drip system, it's an additional cost, the seeds and the other practices that we carry out in here.
Nyanungo and other producers are currently lobbying the government to relax the rules and lower the risks.
We're hoping to get maybe the authorities to allow us to grow outside so that we can increase our hectarage as much as maybe 100 hectares or so, because under greenhouse it will be very, very restrictive.
Cannabis products were on show at a national trade fair in Second City, Bulawayo, earlier this month. Speaking there, Dr. Zorozai Maroveki, the CEO and founder of Zimbabwe Industrial Hemp Trust, warned that the challenges may remain.
If anyone is going to grow for medical grade cannabis, it's going to be at their risk because there are too many variables, too many factors, and so much can go wrong. So it will be a risk to the farmer.
Still, the rewards could still be substantial. Operating since 2003, Nyanungo's forest farm has been growing traditional crops of tobacco and maize and raising cattle, but acquired the cannabis license in 2020. Of his 80 farmhands, 20 are now used for the cannabis plants. He expects to earn over $2.5 million in profit from their first harvest in August.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shiboele. Bye for now.